Hello. Let me know if you can hear me properly. Yeah. So welcome. Hello one, hello all. This is 1C2, if you didn't know. And we're gonna continue with day 3 of our little reading here. So this is the public domain reading hour, or whatever I'm calling this. And today we're going to be doing some Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Yeah, so I thought we'd start with The Mask of the Red Death, which is about a plague. So maybe it's a bit too relevant, but we'll find out one way or another. But I've always wanted to read more Edgar Allan Poe. The last time I read Edgar Allan Poe moderately in depth was probably like back in middle school. We read like The Telltale Heart and maybe something else, but that's all that I remember. So much for the escapist fiction. Yeah, I'm sorry. All art's political, okay? I can't control that. But yeah. I got myself a little glass of scotch right here. And I got myself a cup of water, just in case I get tired of my scotch. So, pull yourself up a chair, get a glass of some, I don't know, your favorite drink. And if you're of age, get some, I don't know, some big boy juice in your system. Alcohol is poison, It is. I'm not going to disagree with that. So anyway, let's get started. And Baja Blast is the only valid drink. Well, if I had some, I'd be drinking some. I would highly suggest you get some, but after the stream's over, because I need that view count to be as high as possible. Holy crap, we have someone drinking Baja Blast. Aiden, you must be a prophet. You sense the Baja Blast energy in chat. So, with that, let's just get started. This should be easier than me reading Rossum's Universal Robots, because it is, not a play. And so, I won't have to do a bunch of silly voices to differentiate between everyone. Also, if you notice, it's the text is properly centered on screen this time. So there aren't any black bars at the bottom or top, and it's not, stretched out awkwardly. So I'm pretty proud of that. It looks pretty nice this time. So let's just get down to it. Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death. Oh, and one more thing before we go. The music being played, this fun little jazz stuff, is I found on the Free Music Archive. And I put a link in chat if you want to listen to it. I was pleasantly surprised by how good it is. Let's see here. Let me double check what it's called here. It's an album called Antipatico by J. Hacha de Zola. So please, by all means, go check it out. It's good stuff. And I really appreciate J. Hacha de Zola for making it. So, now, let's actually begin. The Mask of the Red Death. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and from the sympathy of his fellowmen. And the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless and sagacious. When his dominions were half depopulated, He summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castled abbeys. This was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. This wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and welded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress or egress to the sudden impulses of despair or of frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisatori, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, there was wine. All these in security were within. Without was the Red Death. It was toward the close of the 5th or 6th month of his seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. It was a voluptuous scene, that masquerade. But first, let me tell of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back nearly to the walls on either hand, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here the case was very different, as might have been expected from the Duke's love of the bizarre. The apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left, in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. King of reading, thank you very much. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, and the sixth with violet. The seventh apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep red or deep blood color. Now, in no one of the 7 apartments was there any lamp or candelabrum. Amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof, there was no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within the suite of chambers. But in the corridors that followed the suite, there stood, opposite to each window, a heavy tripod, bearing a brazier of fire that projected its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illuminated? I'm just going to say illuminated the room. And thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered, that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all. It was in this apartment also that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. That was almost a Freudian slip there. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the circuit of the face, and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that, at each lapse of an hour, the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance to hearken to the sound. And thus, the waltzers perforce ceased their evolutions, and there was a brief disconcert, whatever, of the whole gay company. And while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled as if at their own nervousness and folly, amid whispering vows, each to the other, that the next chiming of the clock should produce in them no similar emotion. And then, after the lapse of 60 minutes, which embrace 3,600 seconds of the time that flies. I don't know why he decided to spell that out for us, but it's impressive that Edgar Allen Poe can do multiplication. 3,600 seconds of the time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock, and then were the same disconcert and tremulousness in meditation as before. We got spooky clock. But in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were peculiar. He had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with a barbaric luster. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. Oh, welcome back, Sergeant Chicken Wing. Good to have you back. He had directed in great part the movable embellishments of the Seven Chambers upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masqueraders. Masqueraders? I don't know. Be sure, they were grotesque. There were much glare and glitter, and piquancy and phantasm, much of what has been seen since in Hernani. There were arabesque figures with unsuited limbs and appointments. There were delirious fancies such as the madman fashions. There was much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of that which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the Seven Chambers there stalked, in fact, a multitude of dreams. And these the dreams, right in and about, taking hue from the rooms, and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps. And anon, there strikes the ebony clock, which stands in the hall of velvet. Yet again, I almost did another, little Freudian slip there. I don't know, I'm faking it till I make it, complex note. Even though I'm saying words, my mind is like a few sentences behind trying to comprehend what I'm actually saying. So don't feel bad. I'm just spewing words. Where was I? Ebony clock. That's right, the Freudian slip. And anon, there strikes the ebony clock, which stands in the hall of velvet. And then for a moment, all is still, and all is silent, save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand. But the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light, half-subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again the music swells, and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from the many-tinted windows through which stream the rays from the tripods. But to the chamber which lies most westwardly of the seven, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away, and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-colored panes, and the blackness of the sable drapery appalls. And to him, whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal more solemnly emphatic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of the other apartments. The king of auditory processing, king of reading, That's right, tell your friends. I can speak words good. Maybe it's the scotch that's helping me. I'm all loosened up. Who needs vocal warm-ups when you have alcohol? But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life, and the revel went whirlingly on until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. Ding, 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 ding. And then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened, perhaps, that more of the thought crept, with more of time, into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who revelled. And thus, too, it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. And the rumor of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz, or murmur, expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then finally of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod, and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt, and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments? That's a new word. Habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so clearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. Let me get some water real quick. Stay hydrated, my friends. And yet, all this might have been endured, if not approved, by the mad revelers around. But the murmur had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which, with a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or of distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. "Who dares," he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him, "who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements." We're reading the Mask of the Red Death, my friend, Edgar Allen Poe. It was in the eastern or blue chamber in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room where stood the prince, with a group of pale courtiers by his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of his group in the direction of the intruder, who, at the moment, was also near at hand, and now with deliberate and stately step made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him, so that unimpeded he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the room to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and the shame of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger, and had approached in a rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which, instantly afterwards, fell prostrate in death, the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revelers at once threw themselves into the black carpet, and seizing the mummer, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like mask which they handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. And now it was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held come on. Oh my god. God damn it. The last sentence and I can't pronounce the word. Illimitable. There we go. Let's try that again. In darkness and decay, and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Okay. There we go. That was The Mask of the Red Death. So in summary, it's pronounced illimitable. Thank you. That was fun. That was much shorter than I expected. So essentially, there's a plague going on. The prince is like, hey, I'm going to board up my castle and have a party. And then he does. And then the personification of this pestilence comes to the party. And everyone's like, holy shit, that guy seems creepy. And then Prospero's like, who's that guy? Get him out of here. And then no one arrests him. And then Prospero himself goes up to kill him. And then Prospero dies. And then everyone dies. I blazed through that because I've become a reading god. Maybe I've been touched by God. This is my true purpose. To read to the masses. And by masses, I mean 5 people. Let's keep going. Let's read something else. I went up for the cask of Amontillado. I should add little sound effects when I read. Should I have like a soundboard? Should I have like a, what's it called? Like a ba-dum-tsh that I hit every once in a while when there's a joke? Should I rent out a studio? You would like to see me read some B-movie fan-written fictional stories on the public domain reading hour sometime. Oh. What rating fictional stories would you like me to read? Because I'm sure there's some, ones that are rated R. But maybe there's some that are like G-rated, some G-rated fan fictions that I could find. What about The Raven? Do you really want me to find The Raven, Anastasia? Beatbox all of my sound effects. Use my mouth like a real man. You're right. Real men use mouths. M for B movie. Agreed. Read the entire B movie script. It'll only take well, the movie itself is only 2 hours. I don't know if it'll take 8 hours. It might take a little longer to read some scene descriptions. But oh, I have to read The Raven from memory? Once Upon a Midnight Dreary. That's all I got. Memory from Cats. Scotch is wonderful. Okay, I want to do the Cask of Amontillado next. I'm going to need pauses because of the pain the script will cause. Wouldn't surprise me, my friend. Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe I'll need more scotch in order to read through the entire B-movie script. Anyway, let's do the Cask of Amontillado. Incredible. Subscribed. Thank you, Anastasia, man. So let's get on with the Cask of Amontillado. My posture is awful. I'm shrimping right now. Ugh. Let's try this out. The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled. The very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed have I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. Oh my god. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting, Gemmery? If one of you could kindly look up that word, I'm curious at what Gemmery is. But in painting in that word, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk one evening, during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting, party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you were luckily met. How remarkably well you were looking today. But I have received a pipe what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of a carnival. Oh, gemery. A receptacle for jewels or gems, a jewel house, jewels or gems. Okay, jewelry and stuff. Thank you, Sergeant Chicken Wing. I have my doubts, I replied, and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado? I have my doubts. Amontillado? And I must satisfy them. Amontillado? As you are enraged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from Sherry. Like my diamond block house in Minecraft. It's exactly like that. Exactly. Edgar Allen Poe predicts Minecraft, not clickbait. Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from Sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Oh, come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucchesi, I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish Sherry from Amontillado. I think it's pronounced an Amontillado. Oh, thank you. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm. Armadillo. Thank you. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, putting on a mask of black silk and drawing roquelaire. I think that's what that is. I have no idea what that is. Closely about my person. I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at my home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance. One and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. I'm pronouncing it wrong. Armadillo. Armadillo. Is it like that? Is that right? Armadillo. Anyway, we're going down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came... Where were I? I lost my... Okay, we came at length to the foot of the descent and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, said he. It is farther on, said I. But observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs? Oh god, maybe I had a bit too much scotch here. I can't pronounce things anymore. Was Edgar on crack for this one or what? I don't know, maybe he had a bunch of Amontillado in his system. Maybe he drank too many Baja Blasts. It is further on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the ram of intoxication. Nitre, he asked at length. Nitre, I replied. How long have you had that cough? I guess this is just a bunch of coughing. What do you all think? Is it just ugh? I don't know how to say it. Cough. My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It's nothing, he said at last. Somebody clip that. Oh, maybe it is sexual moaning. Come, I said with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You were a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi. Enough, he said. The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, true, I replied, and indeed I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A drop of this Medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly while his bells jingled. I drank, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. Yes, I am the king of the... These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot door in a field azure, with the foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. That was I don't know how I said that. And the motto? Nemo me impune lacessit. Something Latin. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through the walls of piled bones, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. Nitre! The nitre, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the riverbed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we'll go back ere it is too late. Your cough. Oh, it is nothing, he said. Let us go on, but first, another drop of the Medoc. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. I do not comprehend, he said. Not I replied. Then you were not of the Brotherhood? How? You were not of the Masons? Oh, yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said. It is this, I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire, whatever it is. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low marches, descended, passed on, and descending again. Arrived at a deep crypt, in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau rather to glow than flame. Oh, rip viewer number 8. Oh well. They're gone now. Apparently they're not a fan of 19th century literature. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the fourth, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a small interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use in itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs. and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. Literature. He died in Richmond. Edgar Allen Poe. Fun fact. He did not die. He actually died in Baltimore. Or his body was found... No, he died in Baltimore because he was found drunk and, diseased on the streets in somebody else's clothes. But he lived in Richmond. That's true. Edgar Allan Poe had gotten get wrecked. I'm not wrong. Stop being so stubborn, Anastasia. Slightly more fun. Okay, where was I? The granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi, he is ignoramus. Ignoramus. Apologies for my pronunciation for some vocab words not being up to snuff, but no matter, we carry on. He is ignoramus, interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were two iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet, horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other, a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the niter. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions of my power. The Amontillado, my friend. Or ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones with which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of my masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which I might hearken to it with more satisfaction. I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finished without an interruption the 5th, 6th, and the 7th tier. The walls now nearly upon a level with my breast, I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the masonwork, I threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamor grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined location, or destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "Ha ha 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 ha! He, a very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many rich laugh about it at the palazzo. He he he, over a wine, he he he. The Amontillado, I said. Ah ha ha, he he, ha ha, yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone." "For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato?" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato?" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth, in return, only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. And then, in pace requiescat, something something Latin. Isn't that spooky? I think the music I found actually, it suits the stories pretty well. I'm pretty satisfied with this discovery. King of Dead noises on stream. Maybe YouTube will send me a big plaque with that written on it. I liked the part where the Amontillado nodded. Yes. I did say ejaculated very closely to the mic. Okay. Let's keep going. I'm doing this for an hour. I can keep going. So, I don't know, can you see this on the left? Can you see these, the table of contents on the left? The music is there's a link to it in the description. I don't know, y'all pick one. The Purloined Letter? Telltale Heart? That's the one I actually kind of know. It's up to you. If only I knew how to do a poll, that would be kind of cool. The 8th one? Pick the gayest one. I don't know which one sounds. Von Kempling and his discovery. Rest in peace, Mr. Poe. What is this? 1002nd Tale of the Scheherazade. The Telltale Heart is pretty gay. I mean, just look at the titles. That's all you need to do. I'm not looking for quality. We're just looking for fun stories. That in Richmond, California. Okay, let's go with Telltale Heart. Y'all ready for this? Oh, the Black Cat? We'll do the Black Cat next. In community section, there's option for poll. Well, I'll do research next time, so I'll do it properly. Okay, let's do the Telltale Heart. Fellas, is it gay to keep your homie's heart on the floor? Depends on who you ask. Okay, let's get in the mood. Listen to the sweet notes of spooky jazz playing in the background. Okay, let's begin. The Telltale Heart. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of a hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how the first idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted my day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me, but he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern all closed, that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh no, you ran out of Baja Blast? Oh. We'll just pee in a cup. That'll work. It's a good substitute. Oh. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust in. That's what she said. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. Welcome back, viewer number 8. We're glad to have you. Reading Edgar Allen Poe, spooky stories. Reading The Telltale Heart. So far, we have a crazy guy. And he killed an old man. Or he's talking about how he killed an old man. A single ray. Where was that? But I found the eye always closed. No. A single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Oh! I guess they got embarrassed that I called them out. Oh well. And this, a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in the hearty tone and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed, to suspect that every night just at 12 I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close-fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening at the door, and I kept pushing it on, steadily. Maybe Viewer 7 was getting more Baja Blast. Perhaps. Maybe they were offended by the pee-pee joke. Or maybe my that's what she said joke from earlier. They had to contemplate whether or not they were going to leave for a little bit. I had my head in, and I was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned into the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself how it is nothing but the wind in the chimney, it is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp. Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he never saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. Wait for you to pee, this is an emergency. Just watch me on your phone while you pee. I can't hear you. But you can hear me. I won't hear you pee, it's fine. Sleepy Night? You fell asleep to this yesterday? It's very fitting that your name is Sleepy Night then. You know what? If you enjoy it, even if you fall asleep to it, you have some utility from this, which is more than I could ever ask for. Damn it, where was I? Head within the room. I'm sorry, I cannot Spanish. When I had waited a long time very patiently without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it, you cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with the perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. So long, Anastasia. Thank you for watching. But now the view count's gonna be like 6. Whatever shall we do? Cancel 1TC2 for anti-bilingual rhetoric. I'm not anti-bilingual. Is it anti-bilingual to say that I can't speak a language? Not that I won't speak one, or I'm not interested to learn one. Oh. I'm cancelled. You know, I knew this day would come. Big sad, big sad. Oh well, I'll just keep reading to myself then. The damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eve. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder. I say louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So am I. Or so I am. And now at the dead hour of night, amid the dreadful silence of the old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. Must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, and once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor, pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. Spell iCup? Is that like some sort of Apple device I haven't heard of before? If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Aha! When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity, oh that's a fun word, as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police officer, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. All poets are bad. Do we have meatball and ball meat in chat? How poetic. Just as Edgar Allen Poe would have wanted. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered them cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat, and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feelings, but it continued and gained definitiveness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted presently, and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew, they were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder. Do I think poets deserve rights? I don't know. Just talk about it amongst yourselves. I don't want the stream to get political or anything. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of this hideous heart. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Please answer the question. No, I'm an enlightened centrist. I'm an apolitical actor. I am above the petty squabblings of whatever. That is indeed a weird and complex note. Okay, for the record, yes, I do think that poets deserve rights. They're people too. Even bad poets, even poets who make very, very awful, poetry. Even teenagers who are, expressing their existential teenage angst through very, very poor means deserve rights. Why is this on my recommended after a video about Germa? Because I made a video about Germa. Germa985, the anti-streamer. So you're probably being suggested this because you watched that. Is baby gonna cry because he plays for words for a job? Maybe. Am I gonna need to get moderators soon for this chat? Oh, we're getting out of hand. Yeah, people who party during this crisis are very, very dumb. I do not endorse them. I disavow them. And if I find out any of my friends are doing that, I'm going to, you know, remain in quarantine until then. But after quarantine is over, I will punch them. Maybe. Probably not. Actually, I won't punch them, but I will give them a stern talking to. Oh, we have a Swede in chat? It's bonkers to me that there are, like, international... I say international. People who aren't American who are watching me / watching this. The other day, there was one guy who I believe was Dutch, and now we got a Swede. It's a small world. Now what? Do we want to read another story? Sleepy Night Sims, rise up. Europe gang, rise up. Let's see here. What story do we want to do next? We can do The Black Cat, The Fall of the House of Usher. Or maybe some random one that I haven't read before. Give me your thoughts and feelings. Please submit an application to my business email, Aiden Martin. And then I will take 6 to 24 months to consider your application. You're right. Aiden Martin, your profile is a black cat, so you should read The Black Cat. These read terms and conditions on the Poptropica website. Yes. Make sure you ask a parent, age 18 or older, too, before you go on the whatever. I don't think The Black Cat's 3 hours long. It doesn't seem super long. Let's see here. Wait. It's not that long. I can read it. Okay, let's do The Black Cat. Are we hype? Are we hype? Can I get some hypes in chat? I don't know how to do this. I'm a streamer now. Okay. Let's begin. Edgar Allen Poe's The Black Cat. Actually, I want to see what my audio sound looks like. Edgar Allen Poe's The Black Cat. Oh. I'm surprised that picked up so well. We got poggers in chat. Now that's what I'm talking about. Okay, let's start with The Black Cat. Let's start reading The Black Cat. There we go. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, in the case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they have presented little but horror. To many, they will seem less terrible than Baroque's. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. We got a funny guy. I was especially fond of animals and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of my character grew with my growth. Interesting. And in my manhood, I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly to be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute, which goes directly to the heart of him, who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. You can relate to this thus far. I love how Edgar Allan Poe very verbosely and poetically is like, yeah, dogs are fun. I like petting animals. Animals make me happy. I have a very love-hate relationship with, like, 19th and early 20th century, like, writing and stuff. Because it's so verbose, but it's so fun to read. Because, like, a lot of this can be described very, very succinctly. You know, I like dogs. Pets are fun. I liked pets since I was a little baby. Uses too many SAT words. That's very true. But at the same time, it's just so fun to read, and it's so pretty. And there's so many fun little vocab words that you learn from doing it. And it's to see how you can construct this, like, house of cards. JSTOR words. Okay. Where was I? Let's continue. Gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black, and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Read Cats. Like the musical? I don't think Andrew Lloyd Webber would be very, very happy with Read Cats, the show. Warrior Cats. Maybe Warrior Cats. Although I would need to procure the rights to do so. Damn it, where was I? Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Edgar Allan Poe, make Brain Machine go brrr. Cat Fluffy, I like him, I give food. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had I blushed to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. That's not good. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. Okay. Page 1, over here, he's like, gee whiz, I love pets. Page 2, actually, I beat them because they make me angry. But he likes Pluto. This narrator has some issues he needs to go to a therapist about. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length, even Pluto, who is now becoming old, and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder, while I pen the damnable atrocity. I would say kind of cringe, but also, this is, a bit more serious than just cringe. This is, as it says later on, perverse. So this is not a good guy. But, at least it's fiction. At least a real cat. Well, I'm sure some cat actually did get its eye cut out at some point in time. But, at the very least, this is not a biographical telling of that. When reason returned in the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime which I had been guilty of. But it was at best a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess and soon drowned in wine all of my memory of the deed. Edgar is posting cringe from beyond the grave. In the meantime, In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. I did that because it was in all caps. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account. Yet, I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination in the teeth in the teeth of our best judgment to violate that which is law merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, suffer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. This sounds like teenage angst again. This is a rebellious teenager, rebel without a cause, perhaps even a bro moment. I want to do bad things because bad things are bad, and I'm a bad boy. One morning in cold blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes, and with the bitterest remorse at my heart, hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in doing so, I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. You came back at a very, very bad time. This fella just hung a cat. Because he wanted to. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned to myself thenceforward to despair. This is the black cat, Anastasian man. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering had here, in a great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. But this wall a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very minute and eager attention. The words strange, singular, and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas-relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. Nice. Cats. Thoughts on the musical? Anyone? Bad. Warrior Cats? Better than Cats the musical. I love Baja the Blast the musical. I gave my cat Baja Blast, and then made it do musical theater, not clickbait. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from my sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact that just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came back into my spirit a half-sentiment that seemed but it was not remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me, among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented, for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its place. Okay. This guy thinks it's a good idea to get another cat after he just killed one. One night, as I sat half stupefied in a den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin or of rum which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. 1C2 is stupid, I'm well aware. The story did start out pretty cute. He was like, gee whiz, I do love animals, and I married my wife, and I loved her a lot, and then I got a cat, and we were all happy. But then I started to beat my wife and then also mistreat my animals. What a wonderful narrator. And closely resembling him in every respect but one, Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite splotch of white, covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. Respect my cat challenge. Consider your cat respected. Meow. This then was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued my caresses, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favorite of my wife. What does Pog mean? That's a good question. I don't even think I know anymore. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame, and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not, for some weeks, strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence as from the breath of a pestilence. Edgar Allen Poe. Pog. Bruh. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it also had been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I have already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. Welcome back, Sleepy Night. Did you take a little nap? Or were you awakened by the sweet sound of animal abuse? With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I rose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress clamber in this manner to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. Hydration check. Get some water. Drink some. Stay hydrated. PogChamp, thank you. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am also ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened by one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of the white hair, of which I have spoken, of which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shuddered to name, and for this above all I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. O mournful and terrible engine of horror and crime, of agony and of death! And now was I indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed, a brute beast to work out for me a man fashioned in the image of high God, so much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day nor by night I knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter, I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally on my heart. How tall am I, 1C2? I'm tall enough. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased to hatred of all things and of all mankind. They've quite the misanthrope over here. While from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of a fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to madness. Uplifting an axe, and forgetting, in my wrath, the childish dread which had hitherto stayed in my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which, of course, would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife, goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal. Jeez. I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. Do you ever get so mad at a cat that you kill your wife? That's pretty incredible. Oh no, we lost viewer 8 again? Oh no, they got mad at murder. The murder, was too much. Facecam challenge? Maybe one day. Maybe I'll do some self-portraits and show you them. So you have to sort of keep guessing. Yes, ball meat, that is me. Tell us your height. Several. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandise with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages were recorded to have walled up their victims. Can we email you our concept sketches of what we think you look like? Sure. Sure, you can email them. I'd love to see them. How tall am I in apples? Yeah, several. For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of these walls was a projection, caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the red of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the hole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, here at least then my labor has not been in vain. My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness. For I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate, but it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forbore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the deep, blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night at least, since its introduction to the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and the third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came, very unexpectedly, into the house, and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of my premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say, if but one word, by way of triumph, and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, "I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." In the rapid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I may say an excellently well-constructed house. These walls are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, though, the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane which I held in my hand upon the very portion of the brickwork behind which the corpse of the wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I answered by a voice from within the tomb. By a cry at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman. A howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony and of the demons that exult in the damnation. Of my own thoughts, it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party upon the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of terror and awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast, whose craft had seduced me into murder, whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. Bum bum bum. Okay, I missed a lot. 11 apples tall. Blah blah blah. Read faster, 1C2. Laptop's gonna die. Well, I finished. Is your laptop dead? I'm still reading about cats. Cats blah 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 murder. Epcot mode. This is not a gaming channel. Although maybe one day. There was an exclamation point that was not very exclamative. With the monster up within the tomb! That better? Sorry if I didn't convey my, the narrator's astoundment. Is that a word? Astoundment? Awe-stricken. I'll just say an awe-stricken state. That sounds better. Well, that feel when you murder your wife and then put her inside a wall and then find out that there's a cat in there and the cops show up at your house and the cat yells and you find the cat in the wall with the corpse and you go to jail and you die. Alas, I am not Markiplier. I do not have the sweet baritone timbre of Markiplier's voice, unfortunately. If you were 9, PogChamp. The guy in the story was cringe. I think he was beyond cringe. What's your theory, Miss C2? If you were... Oh. We were about to break new ground. 9 whole viewers. That would have been tremendous. But alas, it was not to be. Do a Markiplier impression? What do you want me to say? I could do one, but like, what's that one with the number? The Markiplier meme with the number? Markiplier. Where is he? Is that 87? You know what I'm talking about. E? I could do E. There's one meme where Markiplier is like in awe, and he's like 87. That wasn't my impression. Oh, the bite of 87. There we go. People come and go. The bite of 87. You like that? We got 12 likes. That's good. I'm glad people, they come and go. What killed Poe? That's the real question. There are a lot of theories. No one knows for sure. That wasn't really good. I'm getting conflicting messages here. Who is to be believed here? Ballmeat says thank you, Markiplier. Meatball says 1 cent too. That wasn't very good. Aiden says that's a very good impression. I don't know. Maybe I should just, abandon my dreams of becoming an audiobook narrator. And, maybe I should just become a Markiplier impersonator. I'll go to, like, a bunch of different conventions. It's like, that guy who's, like, the real life Peter Griffin. I'll be that, but, like, with Markiplier. I'll grow my hair out a little bit. Get the nice little whoosh. Get some, maybe work out a little bit. And then get some flattering, tight-fitting shirts. Please stick to readings, not impressions. Mate, I'll have to agree with you. Oh, wow. I didn't know that Bush did Edgar Allen Poe. Just kidnap Markiplier and take over his channel. No one would notice. I don't know. It's possible. I just couldn't do face cam. Aw. Want me to be at your wedding? I'd be honored. Have I been to the Poe Museum? Believe it or not, I have been to the Edgar Allan Poe Museum. It's pretty pog. Plastic surgery? Maybe when this channel starts chilling out the big bucks, maybe I'll get some plastic surgery and then do my, my crazy evil scheme to take over Markiplier's channel. Poe Museum is pog. Some might even call it the Pog Museum, because it's just so pog. Will I marry you? Well, you gotta show me a ring first. I'm not just marrying just anybody, I'm really enjoying this. Good night, sleepy night. I'm glad to have entertained you. Aw. Look at this community. We all love you, Sleepy Night. Our favorite Swede. May you dream of pine trees and IKEA. How have I been, 1C2? I've been good. I really enjoy doing this. I didn't know if I was actually going to stream today, but I'm glad I did. I did more tending to my garden earlier, which was nice. I thought it was going to rain here, but then it didn't. But it's just been cloudy, so... C'est la vie. So, what do you all think? Do I do one more? Or do we want to just convert to chill time? If copyright didn't exist, we could watch a movie. Chill time. Let's go to chill time. Let's do that. Ah, there we go. I mean, we could watch at some point some movies. Like there are a bunch of movies that are in the public domain because the copyright was never renewed. Where can we find you except YouTube? I have a Twitter. I know that Night of the Living Dead is a public domain movie, and I would love to watch that because I've never ever bothered watching it. So maybe we'll do a movie night. I should watch Killer Bean. Perhaps. Reaction video to Killer Bean. What do I grow in my garden? Sorry, I missed that. I had some green beans, but then they started dying, so I had to take them out. But I got a good number of green beans from it. I had some carrots, which I picked the last of today. And then I have a bunch of tomato plants, and then I have a pepper plant that I'm trying to grow. But has yet to yield any peppers. So, we'll see how that goes. Stream Velocipaster. Maybe. Again, I don't want YouTube to get mad at me, though. Maybe I'll just throw on a bunch of filters so it's, like, completely unrecognizable. But still react to it like a normal YouTuber. Green beans are quite yummy. I'm digging this music. I said it before, but like, oh, I think I might keep this music around. I vibe with it quite hard. What dad noise did I make? Did I just go, ugh? Do you want me to clip the audio? I could do that. There, I turned the audio up a little bit. Oh, I beatbox? That wasn't even conscious beatboxing. Even worse. I would be inclined to agree with you. King of unconscious beatboxing. You know, I will humbly accept that crown. Check my email. Okay, I'll check my email. Actually, where's my phone? Okay, we have 2 applications here. Okay. Wow. So I'm a very, very ethical employer, so obviously I'm going to keep all of your applications anonymous. But you know, I'll say this much. Those are some very, very good applications. Thank you. So, how about that airline food? Anyone? Tell us about yourself. What do you want to know? I'm not good. I have some scotch left. I didn't even drink all of it. But it's good stuff. Good stuff. It's called Monkey Shoulder. It's a scotch, and it's not too expensive as far as scotches go. That was conscious beatboxing. Just, you know, for clarity. I am over 21. Do not worry. I would not be breaking the law while live streaming. My opinion on the Virginia opossum. What do I think about abstract art? Wow, those are two very different questions. Let's take a look at a Virginia opossum. Okay, I'm looking at the possum. Okay, I'm just going through images right now. Oh, okay, I was gonna say they look very cute, but I came across one where it's like hissing. It's kind of scary looking, so I don't know. Oh, okay, I found one with like a cute little harness around it, like going for a walk. There's another one hissing though. Okay, the baby's on the back. That's cute. Okay, you know, these are 10 out of 10 opossums. When they're not angry. When they're angry, maybe a different story. But I think if you piss them off, then you probably did something wrong. Epic Opinion subscribed. I try to, you know, put out there some very epic opinions. There aren't enough epic opinions out there. They're only posers with totally unepic opinions. Very, very cringe opinions. What do I think about abstract art? Well, I'll tell you this much. It's very abstract. And, dare I say it, also art. Ah, the French. Champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. It's California Champagne by Paul Masson. Inspired by the same French excellence. Vintage, dated, fermented in the bottle. Yes. Gotta love drunk Orson Welles. Okay. Any other questions before I close things down? The popcorn guy. Okay. You know, if that's what you know him as, then I'm not going to disagree with you. So yeah, any last minute questions, concerns, comments, likes, subscriptions? Cat, dog, neither or both. I prefer dogs over cats, mostly because I am allergic to cats, I think. Unfortunately. but I do really like cats when my allergies are not acting up. Favorite animal? I have an affinity for penguins and also ducks. Just weird looking birds. That's my shtick, I think. Thank you. Alright, well, this seems like a good place to end, I think. Thank you all for your attention and for watching. This has been really fun. I think this has been the best public domain reading hour that we've done so far. There have only been 3, but goes to show that things have improved over time. I'm glad that there's some people out there who've been enjoying me doing this, and I hope to see you next time. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I just need to find something to read. So until next time, my friends, hope you have a great night, or whatever time it is where you are. And, stay epic. That's my final advice to you. Okay, well, so long, farewell, and have a swell day.